Welcome to the KZGN News. Today we'll bring you news of a drug bust by the Ridgecrest Police, news from Sacramento, what the Rotary Club did recently, today's KZGN Talking Points editorial, weather, sports, and much more.
From the Rademacher Hills to Bee Mountain and the mighty Sierras, Ridgecrest to Inyokern and China Lake, this is your news for the Indian Wells Valley with the KZGN News Crew.
Hello, I'm Tom Wicknick. Thanks for joining us for news affecting Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley. Our lead story is from the Ridgecrest Police Department. Last week, the police officers from the Ridgecrest Police Department responded to a call for a welfare check at the Desert Motel. It turned into a probation search. Officers responding were Santiago Estrada, Shane Joseph, Matt Griffin, and Eric Clinton. During the search, they discovered 5 grams of suspected heroin, 6 grams of methamphetamine, 115 grams of marijuana, prescription medications, drug paraphernalia, and other items used in the drug trade. Arrested at the scene included Ridgecrest resident Brandon Nicholas, 22, Alexander Rump, 24, and Leonardo Delatorre at 22. All were booked into the jail here in Ridgecrest and transported to the Kern County Jail in Bakersfield. In news from Sacramento, we get this financial report. This is the Legislative Analyst Office 2016-17 Fiscal Outlook for California. This report describes our office's current projections for the state budget through 2016-17 and discusses the budget's condition through 2019-20. Under a few different scenarios, the outlook assumes current policies. To produce this report, we must make numerous assumptions about the future. One key assumption is that the state's current revenue and spending policies stay in place. In making this assumption, we are not predicting that current policies will stay in place. The legislature will and should change state policies in the future, consistent with its priorities. The projections in this report are intended to help the legislature understand its fiscal flexibility in considering such changes. The budget situation through 2016-17 is decidedly positive. The state budget is better prepared for an economic downturn than it has been at any point in decades. In 2015-16, we project that the state's Big Three general fund revenues, principally the personal income tax, will exceed June 15 budget assumptions by $3.6 billion, with most of that gain to be deposited into the Prop 2 Rainy Day Fund. In 2016-17, we project that revenues will exceed spending under current policies, resulting in even further improvement in the state's fiscal situation. Assuming no new budget commitments are made, we estimate 2016-17 would end up with reserves of $11.5 billion. Of this total, the legislature would have control over $4.3 billion in the Special Fund for Economic Uncertainties, the state's traditional budget reserve, with the rest of the reserves held for future budget emergencies by Prop 2. After 2016-17, there are risks to be considered. The above estimates are based on our main economic scenario, which assumes the economy continues to grow through 2019-20. This scenario generates significant annual operating surpluses and budget reserves in future years. As such, the state has the capacity under this scenario to make some new budget commitments, whether spending increases or tax reductions. An economic or stock market downturn, however, is possible during our outlook period. To illustrate this economic uncertainty, we provide projections under alternative economic scenarios. Projected reserves provide a major cushion against such economic risks. The more new budget commitments are made in 2016-17, however, the more likely it is that the state would face difficult choices such as spending cuts and tax increases later. As such, the legislature faces a fundamental trade-off between the benefits of new commitments now versus fewer difficult budget decisions later. A sizable reserve is the key to making it through the next economic downturn with minimal disruption to public programs. So the budget is positive. Senate Republican leader Gene Fuller provided the following statement. The Legislative Analyst Office projects that the budget situation is positive for California, said Senator Fuller. But we have to remember that spending is about priorities, and we need to be sure that the legislature's budget priorities match up with the needs of Californians. Even in the absence of Prop 30 taxes, this strong revenue growth shows that it won't be necessary to impose new taxes on California families. Senate Republicans also believe that there are opportunities in the current forecast to restore rates for Medi-Cal providers and address the needs of most vulnerable members of our society, including the developmentally disabled. On climate change, more than 150 leaders have gathered in Paris for a world summit. Obama offered these comments. "We salute Paris and its people for insisting this crucial conference go on, just 2 weeks after attacks that killed 130 people in the French capital." He said leaders had converged to show resolve to fight terrorism and uphold their values at the same time. What greater rejection of those who would tear down our world than marshaling our best efforts to save it, Obama said. Obama's remarks came at the start of the 2 weeks of make-or-break negotiations to finalize a sweeping global agreement to cut carbon emissions and hopefully stave off worst effects of climate change. Efforts to secure a climate deal have been hampered by a long-running dispute about whether developing nations share the same burden as industrialized nations that have historically polluted much more. The U.S. and other nations have insisted that all countries chip in under the new agreement. Aiming to put a finer point on that agreement, Obama met Monday with the president of China, which has started taking aggressive action to curb emissions, and with India's prime minister, who has argued repeatedly that climate change isn't India's fault. As he sat down with Modi, Obama said he agreed that India has the right to pursue economic development and fight poverty, but said those priorities must also reflect serious and ambitious action by all nations to curb its carbon pollution. Modi pledged that India will fulfill its climate responsibilities in full, declaring that development and protection of the environment go hand in hand. In his meeting with Xi, Obama said nowhere had coordination with Beijing been more critical or fruitful than on climate change. He credited U.S. and Chinese leadership with leading 180 nations to make their own pledges to curb emissions in the run-up to the Paris talks. This is a 2-week summit. Now stay with us after the break. News from the China Lake Rotary Club. Thanks for staying with us. In news from the Rotary Club of China Lake, they have announced the donation of around 450 books to Bella Sierra. Rotarian David St. Amand presented the books to Michelle Lemke of the Skilled Nursing Center and Support Services at Bella Sierra. Michelle expressed total gratitude for the donation. They view the books as important life-enhancing products to improve their residents' life. If you'd like to help Rotary or would like to learn more about the club, join them at the Clarion Inn Wednesdays at noon every week. Just come to the door and say you want to learn more about Rotary. Well, now we head towards Christmas, my favorite time of the year. And true to form, the Salvation Army again is out at all major stores ringing their Christmas bells for donations. There's one fine lady I seem to run into almost every time I go into some store, Gail Reihart. She always greets me with a "Hi, Tom," and wishes me a grand day. She always has a smile for the passers-by. She's been doing this for 10 years. To Gail and all the volunteers that brave the cold temperatures, well done, I say. And next time you pass by the little red bucket, toss in your loose change. Or more if you can. You'd be surprised how just a bunch of quarters can add up to real money real quick. The Salvation Army does a lot for the community, but they need the finances to help keep things going. And just return their smile with a Merry Christmas. And I would add to the story that if any of you out there working with a nonprofit group doing good for the community, send us a press release on what you're doing. We may cover the story in our news. Now it's time for the 99th KZGN News Talking Points editorial. Here's today's topic. Well, folks, I write today's editorial totally amazed. Today's editorial is titled, "Is it possible to discuss national security when it comes to keeping out people that want to kill us without personal attacks?" The last editorial I did was titled, "It seems the Syrian refugee problem is now splitting the country." Well, I posted it on the Indian Wells Valley Discussion Group Facebook blog. I am shocked by the comments that were offered. The discussion started off pretty sane and on topic, but it seemed to evolve into the world of personal attacks on writers when points were made that could not be accurately disputed by the person on the other side of the issue. I received personal attacks when points were made as well. I was called a liar, a bigot, and more. People declared I said things I never said. When you see these blogs, you can see how many people are reading them. It's very telling why others don't make comments, and it's probably because people just don't want to subject themselves to personal attacks. But you know what? I really don't care about personal attacks. Really. People can call me any names they want. It doesn't bother me, nor does it make me wilt down and change my opinion. I just realize that some people just can't handle the truth. When someone tries to use common sense to make an argument, and the opposition doesn't want to, then it's a problem. Facts are presented that dispute one position or another, and then someone goes berserk. It's fascinating. It's like one person will say 1 and 1 equals 2, but the opposition says, no, it doesn't. They would argue 1 plus 1 equals 2. Plus is the right word, not and. So here we go. And again, I'm using this as an example, not as a topic of discussion. But I guarantee someone will see or read this editorial and criticize the example. Anyway, back to the point of this example. The person saying and is the right word now gets into it with another person that says you have to say plus. And the internet is fantastic for providing supporting documentation to bolster one's position. One person will post a dictionary definition of both words. Then the other will find another slightly different dictionary definition to use. Then we get Facebook videos of someone lecturing about the use of and plus. Someone will find some college professor lecturing on the proper use of the words. Then the other person will find another scholar dissertation rebutting the argument. And all along, both are making legitimate points. But one side gets so mad that they have to be right that they lower the discussion to personal attacks. Now the main topic. Should this country do more to ensure the Syrian refugees to this country are not disguised as terrorists? First, I want to make one point real clear. I do not think all Syrians are terrorists, like one blogger tried to say I said. I have said that I know probably 95% are fine, okay people. But just like our own citizens, not all are fine, upstanding people. Some are criminals. We have them here. And when it comes to these refugees, France has proven one and maybe even two of the terrorists snuck into France as Syrian refugees. But some of the people on these blogs see no problem with that. They try and deflect the problem as that we also have problems here now. I guess that means in their minds, since we already have problems, we may as well let more in. Does that make sense to any logical person? I equate that to a lesson I was taught very young. I was in the kitchen watching my mother cook, and I touched the hot stove and got burned. If you know that touching a hot stove can severely hurt you, don't touch it. They say we need to screen them and let them in, and that the current screening process is fine. Even after the administration's own heads of Homeland Security and the FBI have stated they do not have a way to completely screen them. I don't understand how the supporters of the refugees can rationalize that the problem has no problem. Here we have ISIS in Syria putting out videos that they are going to attack us on our soil. They have declared that they will kill anyone that does not convert to Islam. They will destroy our civilized way of life. They are flat out warning us. And then we see millions of Syrian refugees fleeing their country to get away from being killed by ISIS. And right from the start, some people were expressing concern that ISIS could export their terrorists into the West under cover of these migrations. And then we have evidence that they actually did so in France. But even with all that conclusive evidence, there are some that still think we should let them in on our soil. I have to ask, how many times should we touch a hot stove before we learn not to do that? Our elected officials have taken an oath to protect us from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I think we have enough crime and problems now in our country. Why would any sane person want to possibly invite more in? Why are most people screaming for more border security? Oh, and by the way, this has nothing to do with fear. Nothing. It has to do with being smart. I have not changed the way I live because of the terrorist threat. I don't go to bed at night worried about them. But I expected elected officials to do what they took an oath to do, provide for the security of our country. Oh, but wait. The supporters all feel the vetting process will catch the bad ones. Really? Again, The administration's own head of Homeland Security and the FBI have said there is no way they can adequately vet these refugees. Syria is in total chaos. There is no access to their records. I say, let's support countries like Jordan that is begging for financial help to hold these refugees. I would like someone in the administration to come out and say why other Mideast countries are not taking them in. I bet these other countries' leaders are just sitting in their offices laughing at the Western countries doing this. Again, I want to be real clear. This editorial is not about a slam on all Syrians. I know most of them are fine people. But if even one gets through and kills someone or does another Boston bombing, then bad on us. What's the old adage? Make a mistake once, learn from it. Make it a second time, dumb on me. Anyway, I hope this is my last editorial on this topic, at least for a while. In conclusion, step up, Washington officials. Honor your oath of office to protect us from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Don't invite them in without proper screening. And it's okay to help other countries house them. I'm Tom Whitnick, and that's what I think. I'd like to know what you think. If you have any comments about this editorial or would like to discuss or recommend a topic, I'd like to hear from you. Please email them to info@kzgn.net. Now stay with us for weather and sports when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to Lane for the weather.
Thank you, Tom. From the National Weather Service, a storm system will continue to bring widespread snow to the upper Midwest on Tuesday. The same system will bring heavy rain and possible flash flooding to parts of the Appalachians. Meanwhile, a storm system moving onshore will bring freezing rain and snow to the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures across the nation: Carolinas at 59, Georgia at 70, Arkansas at 51, Northern Texas at 57, New Mexico at 43, and LA at 66. And for us locally, tonight, mostly clear with a low around 35, west wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 63 with a calm wind. Wednesday night, partly cloudy with a low around 36, east-southeast wind 5 miles per hour. Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 68, north wind 5 miles per hour. Thursday night, mostly cloudy with a low around 38, south-southwest wind 5 miles per hour. And Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 64, west-northwest wind 10 miles per hour. And that is your forecast for the IWV. Now back to Tom.
Thanks, Lane. And now here's Tom Heck with sports.
And a very pleasant Tuesday afternoon to everyone. Let's start with some local sports news. This coming weekend up at Saracoso College will be the annual boys junior high basketball tournament. All the local teams in town are participating, and some of the towns and teams from other areas will be represented this coming Saturday. There will also be some games this Friday night. That's December 4th on Friday night and December 5th. So check the Daily Independent. They'll have a complete schedule for us. And Anthony Barnes over at Murray Junior High School, he's the athletic director. He would like to say a special thank you to all those that participated in the turkey trot last week. They had a very big crowd, made over $1,600, and I understand it was a great time. He'd like to personally thank all the many sponsors, more than we have time to go over, but it was really appreciated, well attended, and it was a nice brisk morning, and everyone had a great Thursday morning. It's an annual thing. They do it every year, and if you're interested in participating or doing something about running or some power walking, contact Anthony Barnes. He's a junior high coach at Murray Junior High School. He was a former Burroughs varsity cross country coach. I'm with Patrick Sale. Patrick's a member of the Saracoso baseball team. Saracoso will be getting underway in early February. They'll have a 36-game schedule. They play in the Foothill Conference. And Patrick, I know you're a member of the team, and coming off the bench right now, but you play the outfield some. And what do you see in the future for Saracoso baseball this year?
I see a very bright future for Saracoso baseball. We got a good young team. I think maybe 3-4 sophomores. A lot of big bats. We got some good pitching, and from my understanding, we got more on the way. So I think we're going to have a very excellent season. I think we're going to be the big surprise in the conference this year.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the Foothill Conference now in comparison with some other conferences, maybe not as strong, but very respectable. And last year I think we were competitive with a team that was kind of put together at the last minute. This year some good local talent is in. Also a lot of guys were brought in. Coach Scott's done a great job getting kids up the hill. But talk about the conference and how do you see us compared to some of the other teams?
Well, California JUCO Conference, obviously you're going to be a lot more competition, a lot of other states. We got the baseball weather year-round. San Bernardino, one great program, a lot of talent there. We've been playing Chaffee. We played a few other teams in our conference, and we were right there with them. During the fall, you do 14, 16-inning games, so you don't exactly get best idea, but through the first 9, we're hanging tough. There are a few there where we were ahead after 9. There are some we're tied, and then there are even a few we're just down by 1 or 2. So we're staying competitive, and it's just the fall. So we've made some adjustments, and I think we're gonna have a very strong team.
All right, Patrick, we'll appreciate you stopping by. And a couple notes before we leave you this afternoon. Don't forget that on Friday night, big football game. It'll be a surprise USC team that beat UCLA 40-21 last weekend at the Coliseum. They're going to be taking on a very good Stanford team for the Pac-12 championship. Stanford, by the way, defeated Notre Dame 38-36. A great come-from-behind win for the Cardinals. Some great games last weekend. We'll talk more college football tomorrow. We'll look over the top teams right now. Who may be in the 4-team playoff for the BCS? Should be very interesting as things wind down. And don't forget, Sunday night, Monday Night Football. Some great games this last few weeks on Sunday Night Football. The Denver Broncos took it to New England, their first loss of the year. And then on Monday Night Football, if you can believe it, a blocked field goal attempt at the very end gave the Ravens a win over the Browns in the last play of the game. Boy, Sunday and Monday night have become great nights for football. Some great close games this season for all the football fans out there. That's your sports for this Tuesday early evening. I'm Tom Heck for KZGN.
So that's the news for today. All of the KZGN-TV know you have a choice in what you watch for your news. We all thank you for choosing KZGN-TV, Ridgecrest's only locally owned community TV station. Stay tuned for Ridgecrest Talk coming up next.